Good morning. Thank you for being here today. I know we're getting started a little earlier than normal for our Cultural Thursday events. We're really pleased to see such a great crowd. My name is Jori. I am the organizer for the Cultural Thursday program, as well as the director of the Central Lakes Community Performing Arts Center. And we are glad you will be here for our first of two Cultural Thursday presentations today. We are pleased to welcome Minnetonka Moccasins President Jori Miller Sherer and Adrienne Benjamin, a dynamic artist and community activist who hails from the Mille Lacs Band of the Ojibwe. Her remarkable journey includes accomplishments as a master dressmaker, a mother of two, a writer, an organizer of youth programs on the Mille Lacs Reservation. She has received numerous honors and fellowships since 2016, and she currently works as the Reconciliation Advisor for Minnetonka Moccasins. But first, I have a couple of other people that I'd like to introduce and thank before we get the show going. So I would now like to introduce Katie Hepner of the North Central Small Business Development Center, our co-producer for this event. Katie?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Like Joey said, I'm Katie Hepner. I'm the regional director of the North Central Small Business Development Center. If you're not familiar with the SBDC, we provide no-cost, one-on-one consulting to entrepreneurs and small business owners throughout North Central Minnesota. And we're proudly hosted here at Central Lakes College. When Joey reached out to me and proposed this topic and bringing Adrienne and Jori to campus, I immediately said, yes, of course. One, because everything Adrienne designs is somehow gorgeous and beautiful, and she deserves to be like uplifted, and people should see this work. But also, this is a very important topic for entrepreneurship. So as you're listening to today's presentation, I want to challenge you to think about two things. One, what power do entrepreneurs have to challenge the status quo? And two, what responsibilities do business owners have to be socially responsible? And what does that look like? This is a very critical conversation for our community, and entrepreneurship is not just about making money and driving profits. It's about having impact on community. And that's what Adrienne and Jori do. So, Joey, without further ado, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Katie.
Yep.
I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge the team leading the International Education Week, which I believe is November 13th through the 17th, who have shared with us this message. In honor of International Education Week, CLC and the Global Education Committee would like to recognize the Cultural Thursday series, our wide array of speakers, and all audience participants who have supported the program over the last 25 years. We are proud at CLC to value global education and encourage you to stay informed of all the exciting global ed opportunities that CLC strives to offer our greater campus community, and happy International Education Week to you all. You can find more information about the International Education Week out in the lobby after the show. Adrienne will be joining us in a few minutes. We will first be joined this morning by Minnetonka Moccasins President Jori Miller Sherer. The company Minnetonka was founded in 1946 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where they are still based. The company was named after the nearby Lake Minnetonka. Minnetonka started out as a small business creating souvenirs and other goods for roadside gift shops in the regions, and as more and more families took to the open road to explore America, their handcrafted footwear influenced by traditional Native American moccasins began to become their primary product. Here to share with us the story of this company, as well as their history with Indigenous entrepreneurship and dealing with the issue of cultural appropriation, please join me in welcoming via Zoom, Jori.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to be talking about this topic. It's a layered, complex, deep conversation, and it might sound funny to say I'm excited to talk about it, but I am, because I feel that it's just one of the most important things that I do at work. So a little background, Minnetonka, as mentioned, was founded in 1946. It's a 77-year-old business, and I am president here. It's a fourth generation family-owned company. So I work with my dad, who's our CEO. My 92-year-old grandfather still works, and I have a cousin in the business as well. As a family, years ago, many decades ago, there wasn't really an understanding, both as a family and also in the greater culture, around cultural appropriation. And it wasn't until the last decade that it's something that we really kind of started to understand. And once we realized that we were appropriating from the Native American culture, we to be very honest, had a couple years of just being paralyzed by fear of what to do. So the first step we took was in fall of 2019, when we reached out to somebody and had that first lunch, and she became our first Native American advisor. Then if you cut to when George Floyd was murdered, that was a time a few months into COVID when, as a business, those first few months of COVID, we were, keeping the lights on, and the retail industry was just an absolute disaster. So dealing with all of that and dealing with, 15 fires a day, if you will. When George Floyd was murdered at the end of May, in 2020, that really became a time when we said, okay, this topic of cultural appropriation needs to go back to the top of our list, and it's stayed at the top of our list ever since. In 2020, that summer, we put an acknowledgement on our website. It's basically like a commitment letter, and we called it cultural appropriation. We apologized for it, and we said, come back this fall, and we're going to update this information with more of a plan, which we did. Throughout that time, we were continuing to meet people in the community. Very fortunate to meet many wonderful people some of whom became more advisors for us from the Native American community. And that is how we ended up getting introduced to Adrienne. I can kind of once she arrives in about 5 minutes, I'll let her kind of tell her version of it. But we met her through someone, an elder in the community. And one thing that really connected us to Adrienne is this belief she has in systematic change. So I'll get back to that in a second, but Adrienne became our most public-facing advisor, with the title Reconciliation Advisor. And that relationship has been one since very, very early 2021 that has been incredibly valuable to us. Adrienne is fantastic on every level, and as you'll see shortly. But I just want to go back for a second and talk about the two questions that you were asked to think about, because this really, really spoke to me. What power do entrepreneurs have to challenge the status quo? And then what responsibilities do business owners have to be socially responsible? These are two amazing questions. And when I talk about Adrienne's belief in systematic change, it's been a topic we've talked about ever since we first met. If we are going to make any big change, you need every sector to do their part. Government, education, for-profit businesses, nonprofit businesses, everyone needs to do their part to move forward change. So for me, I've been at this company 13 years. It is a family business. If I were starting a company today, it would not look anything like the company I'm currently running, because I want to start a company that has so many products that are culture appropriating. That being said, my mission in life is to take an older business and turn the ship to become an example of how you can show up differently, how you can right wrongs. And I value so much people who start businesses today. We're in the footwear industry. So for example, a company or a brand like Allbirds or like Rothy's, these companies have sustainability as part of their founding missions. In 1946, that wasn't really on the radar. So I admire people starting companies today who are thinking about all those things. I think it's critical. That's not my lot in life, if you will. It's to take an older company and kind of change the tide. So that is sort of a high level overview of kind of where we are. And I'm going to kind of keep going a little bit until Adrienne arrives, but I wanted to talk for a minute about what that plan was that we initially put forth in fall of 2020, because it's actually become a foundation that we update every year and we go back to. there are multiple pillars to it, and I just want to share some details. I think around that time, I don't know if you all agree, but after George Floyd was killed, there were a lot of companies who said a lot of things and people who gave a lot of money. I think sadly, there are people who made promises that they never really fulfilled. There's some people who did the opposite, which is fantastic. So let's talk details, right? We don't just, say words, we have to follow through on them. How do we as a business do business with Native owned companies? That's a huge one. How do we tell our story in a different way? The intro about the company, I think, you can go on our website and see in our story, it was named after, I think I see Adrienne walking in your jingle dress. I see you, Adrienne. Love it. The company was named after Lake Minnetonka, which is close by, but we added to our website that there is the name Minnetonka actually comes from the Dakota language, and we didn't know that until later. So just trying to be honest about that. Philanthropy is a big part. And then one of the biggest parts is working with Native American designers and artists so we can shine a light on them, because that is the area in which we've appropriated. So Adrienne has had a huge role in that. And that has been probably one of the most public things that we've done that people can kind of see. So it's a very important part of how we're trying to show up differently in the world. So Adrienne, you want to take over?
Yeah. So, hi, Jori. This feels weird. So we were momming. I was momming this morning, and we covered for each other. I was like, help. So thanks, Jori, for that. So I was listening, so I understand where Jori's at in this conversation. How it looked for me when I entered into this conversation to even begin this journey working with Minnetonka was I was nervous about it, to be honest. I had been approached by a Minneapolis elder who worked for Indian Business Alliance, actually. And she approached me, and after I had done some contract work with her and I had numerous hours-long conversations talking about kind of this stuff, just business. What does it look like for Indigenous entrepreneurs? And she called me one day and she was like, you know what, I've been talking to this company and they have done some appropriation. They're looking for somebody to lead this, effort for them to undo some of this wrong or to better what they can in the process. And again, I was very nervous. I was quite unsure if I wanted to go forward. For me, it came down to meeting Jori and David and really understanding that it had to be something that wasn't just a reflex move, right, from the George Floyd or from somebody pressing them. But for me, this had to be something that was meaningful change. And as I've done this work more and more, I say it time and time again that this can't be a policy. This isn't something that gets enacted into any business, into any philanthropic organization. You personally and the people that are running any of these businesses, whatever it is, have to do that work. And the work, which Jori can talk about this too, is quite deep. And it's quite, it's more than just putting something in place and saying, okay, we're gonna donate a bunch of money to these Native organizations and call it good, right? It's way more than that. And one thing that really struck me when I began conversations with Jori and David was their own personal understanding of the appropriation, right? Like, they had a deeper understanding of what it meant. I didn't feel like I had to explain so many things about it. And they had done their own homework, and they had reached out to, more than just myself. So that alone right there told me that they cared about it, Beyond that, we talk about this quite often. In that same conversation, there was, a lot of maybe unpleasant or laid bare things that weren't comfortable to talk about. in every conversation that I have surrounding this, there's tons of things that are very uncomfortable for people to talk about. And I think what I've learned through this is all of that really comes from a place of shame and unknowing. Those two things are really heavy in this work. And I think, you know, what Jori opened with, that's a line I've heard from not just Minnetonka, but with other organizations that I've worked with, is I felt paralyzed. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to move. If I did this, I was afraid I was gonna get called out for that. Like all of those different feelings are common as we all get educated and learn more about what appropriation is, what, you know, true history looks like here in the United States. So those are really deep things that this company, this family truly, had to take on for themselves. So moving from that, we had this meeting. I thought Jori and David were pretty cool, and they were into it, you know. And one comment that Jori made in that meeting, and even that she still continues to make today, is that this isn't just a one-time thing, or it's not just a couple collaborations, or it's not just, you know, the public announcement or the news story. This is going to be something that's embedded into their company forever, as far as Jori is concerned. And she can speak to that too more. But that was, for me, I was like, okay, I'm willing to do this work. I'm willing to stand in this, to make these plans, to, you know, put myself out there too. That's a big part of this work that, like, we're still just working through. Like, you know, this has overlapped into my career so much that, you know, I am an artist on my own, and I don't technically work for Minnetonka. Like, I have my own consulting, and I'm a contractor with them, right? But it's like that story and everything that we've done has become so like married that now it's Adrienne and Minnetonka Moccasins, right? So we just roll with that. And I'm cool with it because I am really proud of the work that we've done. So Jori didn't get into one thing that I do want to talk about with entrepreneurship. So when we first, after we decided, okay, we're going to work together, let's start talking about where this goes. I'll let you tell it from there. What happened?
Yeah, I was saving it for you. So Adrienne, of course, was the first artist we thought we should do a collaboration with. And we were pretty far down the road, and she was gonna launch with these hand-beaded hats, these beautiful hats that she makes. And as we got closer to the launch date, this is where you were going, right?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. As we got, sometimes we mind melt. As we got closer and closer, Adrienne said, hold up, pause. This doesn't feel right. We've never publicly talked about the work that we're doing. And I think we need to do that before we launch a product. Even me personally, as an artist, I kind of need that cover, let alone all the future launches we hope to do and the future artists we hope to work with. And we said, okay, we thought what we were doing is we were kind of walking the talk by saying, not only are we saying we're going to do things differently, but here we actually are. Here's the tangible product, because people say things all the time. Whether you're a company or a politician or anybody, you can say whatever you want, but to actually do something. And she said, okay, I hear you, but I'm still going to say pause. And so we listened to her. And instead of launching a product, what we did in October of 2021 is there was an article in the Star Tribune paper where Adrienne was interviewed along with another advisor of ours, actually. And it talked about the work that we've been doing. And I don't remember the exact headline, but it was something like Minnetonka Moccasin apologizes for cultural appropriation, you know, something that distilled this whole topic into like one thing. And it actually ended up going viral. It was picked up by over 70 publications. We had no idea that that would happen. And it became a pretty big deal. So that was the first, like, most public step we had ever done, because to be fair, yeah, we had put something on our website in the summer of 2020, but I mean, that's just not the same as an article in the paper. I understand that not everybody's like going to a brand's website to read letters. So that was big. So Adrienne, do you want to talk about some of the reaction that you received when that happened? I can, of course, always talk about the fun stuff we got, but you go first.
Yeah. So I also want to add that this was not a like skillfully, well, it was skillfully crafted because we put a lot of our skills into this, but it was us, like Jori, myself, and Katie Awanan, who is, sorry, I don't want to.
She's our VP of Marketing Strategy. Yeah. And
Okay.
Miller, our CEO. There was
Yeah.
Olivia Pope, crisis PR agency writing this for us.
Yeah, and it was like a lot of drafts and a lot of just, we had to really go into deep talks about, I mean, even, you know, the things and that Jori feels and thinks about this are different than what David feels and thinks about this. And we all had to put our heads together and be like, what is it that needs to be said? And I think to get in, before I get into what the reaction was, I've really looked at this work too in simplifying this into relationships. And to me, if there is something that happens in any interpersonal relationship, the one thing that needs to happen first is what? Like, I have to at least know that I hurt you, right? I have to know that I did something wrong. Maybe I didn't know that. Maybe I did, right? But that part needs to be first. From there, what usually comes next? A well thought out apology, right? And so that was how we approached this, is like, and our thought when this was going to go to publication was that this is just going to be, we really wanted like the Native community to see this, and even just Minnesota, right? Because this company's from here. And yeah, we had no clue that it was what was gonna happen. Like, people were sending me like, David and I, picture was on like the Daily Mail thing on Snapchat. That was crazy for me. Personally, I was like, whoa, like there I am, like doing this work, like going back and forth from my res house in Chiminising to being on Daily Mail Snapchat was not something I saw the day after that happened. So, but the reactions that I received, and was my concern, right, when I started doing this work, was like, oh, you're just like hanging around the fort and you're doing this work, you're standing with these people and they've done all of this. But I looked at it more as an opportunity for healing, right? And for folks to have opportunities to work with a big name company, artists that may not otherwise be out there, to be able to do something they've never done. And I'm really big on that. Like, I want to say too, I preface all of this work from the fact that I did youth programs that pushed that same envelope in Mille Lacs. Like, I wanted kids to be able to have different experiences, to get outside of the reservation, to succeed and have the biggest dream. So taking this work on for me was like, oh yeah, like what artists, it would be so cool for this to be authentic beadwork, to have authentic designs and work with, a big name company. So I was surprised that I had a good reaction. I never had trolls. I didn't have anyone calling me out. Like, I quit reading the comments in the Star Tribune, not because they were negative towards me, but I felt like, just like with anything, there's a lot of knee-jerk reactions that were happening. It was like, oh, this is stupid, or, like, woke this or whatever, like, about what was happening. And like, to me, that was really sad, because it's like so much care, concern, thought, like, went into this, right? Oh, what happened?
I hear you.
Oh, okay. There was something that popped up on the screen, right? We're still good. Yeah. So I was surprised, and it was like folks were cool about it, and they thought it was like, wow, this company, which I don't particularly know of another company who's went publicly like to this extent to do this, right? Like, we could have just donated and been quiet and, like, oh, now we're gonna feature Native artists and all of this stuff. Like, that's the route that Minnetonka could have taken. But I just had, and still have, like, such mad respect for the fact that they were willing to like lay the company and themselves out on the line and say, hey, we were wrong. Like, there's there's so many like aspects of that, as just specific to being Indigenous, to being, you know, all these other cultures out there that like might never even hear that from the government, from any of these other, you know, agencies that have done harm over time. So for me, I was like, that's pretty cool. Like it's brave. It's like a lot of things, and it is what should have happened anyway, right? So you can, like, there's a lot of different feelings behind it. But I still say to this day, like, I think that it's just so much more meaningful to be a part of this work, knowing that this company was brave enough to go out on that edge and really educate themselves and do that. And now I'll let Jori share her fun remarks. New word, new name.
Yeah, so you're right. We really were speaking to the Native American community primarily, and definitely in Minnesota. And Adrienne, you didn't say this, but I'm going to say it. I know you got a lot of comments from people who were like, wow, people who you thought would be really skeptical, who said, wow, because it's you, I really believe, and I'm excited to see what comes next. So that was fantastic to see that. And then we kind of had a couple other categories of reaction. Obviously, there were a lot of people who didn't say anything. Interestingly, we got a huge bump in sales on our website. We never once talked about that happening. I don't really think you're going to go have an article about apologizing for cultural appropriation and think that you're going to get a bump on your website. So that was interesting, and tells us that people supported it. You got people who said, wow, thank you for saying this, like, keep it up. You got people who made comments where you're like, huh, you're obviously only reading the headline, because if you read the actual article, it addresses what you're talking about in paragraph 1. So everyone, please contain your shock that people on the internet only read headlines. I know you've never imagined a world, but yes, we found that to be very true. And then lastly, we absolutely got people who were the loud minority saying, you went woke, I hope you go broke. Trolls are going to troll. And we learned a lot through that experience in terms of when to engage people and when not to engage people. With our team here, my dad and I responded to all the emails we received. We gave advice on how to respond to all the social comments we received, and we had a couple people here who were also very involved in that. So that was a great learning. I really am at a place where I just really don't care if you're gonna troll us. If that's your position, like, bye, go buy something from somebody else. So the other interesting part is that we are not here to debate whether we are appropriating or not. We're not really wasting our energy engaging, trying to convince people that we are or not. There have only been a handful or two of comments over the years of people who are like, well, what about Italians? Should we not eat pizza? I mean, we're not engaging in that. We know we've appropriated. We've said that from the beginning. And I do think that's part of why we've had such incredible conversations with people in the community, that we can get to right away, because they don't have to be like, do these people even understand if they are or not? So that's been really helpful to just get to the work, get to the depth. So that was our reaction. And then 2 months later, we launched Your Hats, which sold out.
Yes. So that also led us from that point to start kind of maybe putting feelers out there to work with other artists who are interested in doing some work with Minnetonka. I'll take a question right now, sure.
Would you mind just defining cultural appropriation? So that everybody knows, or how you're thinking about it? Just a question about defining cultural appropriation.
I mean, I can give you Google's.
That'd be fine.
I mean, it can be, okay. Actually,
How about through your eyes, Kate? How about through your eyes in terms of an Indigenous woman, how would you feel?
here's the quick note of Siri knowledge. a member of a majority group oversimplifying the culture of a minority group. And that can be, for me, I'll go into it. I shared this with Jori and David, and I shared it with their company, and I share it with pretty much when I do any kind of cultural competency training. So my great-grandparents sold goods on the side of 169 in Mille Lacs, and so did many others. And during the time that this was all occurring, you'd have to Google. I should have this all so I can answer this quickly, but you're teaching me. During those times, it wasn't always legal for Indigenous Americans to be able to speak their language, to be able to practice their religions, to be able to sing their songs, to be able to even dress the way that they chose to do. So for the example that I've used is, imagine those folks having what little they already did, because there was no bootstraps at that point. People weren't hiring Indigenous folks, all of these different things. And this truck backs up with Minnetonka moccasins, and it looks like your stuff, but you're not accepted into the society, but your stuff's cool. Like, that's super harmful to a psyche. That's super harmful to the economy of that, those folks that were selling those things. Yeah, so I think when I think about it, I look at it like it's always kind of given this vibe or aura of like, we like your stuff, but not you. And we want, that beadwork, we want that leather work, we want all these other things, but you're not good enough. And that's what cultural appropriation looks like to me in specific. And I can't imagine, like the economic impact and the shock and just the hurt and the misunderstanding. Like, to one person, it's, well, this is capitalism, it's business, hey, But on the other hand, there wasn't justice happening. There was like non-even, social constructs in place that were keeping people from having the same rights. So then you have this come in here, and I think it goes as far, you can talk about it in the theme of mascots, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing, like across the board. We like that. That's pretty cool. We like that chief stuff. We like that stuff. We don't like you. Change who you are. Don't speak your language. Don't dance. Don't practice what you believe. But we like that other stuff. Keep that coming. That's crazy and wrong.
Can I jump in on that too?
Yep.
So I think that in the fashion world, which I guess we're kind of in, it's a really interesting conversation. What is cultural appropriation versus inspiration? And ultimately for us, we have styles. We're also a very specific kind of company, which I'm not going to go off on a whole tangent, but we have a lot of styles, unlike a lot of other footwear brands that we've had for decades. We're not like a Steve Madden where every season we drop everything and then have new stuff. So, some of this stuff that's appropriate we've had in the line for decades. Are we giving credit to where the design came from? And we weren't. A lot of it is like whitewashed, it's clear the influence is there, but there's no credit given and there's no acknowledgement, whether it's verbal, written, financial. So that's how we think about it. As far as legally in this industry, there's very little law around this, and Adrienne, she did a talk to our whole company about this, and she and I spent so many hours talking about this topic because it's very interesting. Like, there was the whole interview with Gwen Stefani recently about how she appropriates from Japanese culture and her responses to that. You can Google it if you haven't seen that, but it was like very fascinating because she just, like, in my opinion, really doesn't get it at all. I am Japanese. I feel Japanese. I don't know. Down to the whole, like, who should be allowed to wear regalia or not. I mean, this is very layered, but at its most simple, I mean, you asked a seemingly simple question. I want to like give a concrete answer, which is just to highlight what I said a second ago. It's when you have designs and you're not giving credit where those were coming from if you were influenced by something else. So that's just a very concrete way of thinking about it from the brand side.
So it is very layered. Obviously, there's fashion and there's culture, like living, like world end. There's a lot of different ends. And another interesting thing just from this work too was that like the United States Patent Office reached out to us to talk about this topic because there isn't a lot of laws around it. Like what is protected under these trademark and copyright laws, what isn't. So it's like, this is all new. That's how new this work really is. And even just coming around to understanding what it means and how it's negatively affected Indigenous art, right? That's just now being looked at and really started to being paid attention to. And that's on world levels too, So obviously Native Indigenous folks from this land there's those people all over the world. So yeah, and I'll go a little bit further. I don't know what the time is that you were expecting. Hour? We have about 20 minutes. Okay, perfect. I will go into this then. So one thing to keep going on that topic, I did work with a company called Coral and Tusk. They make really cute tableware. You can look them up. They reached out knowing that they also had appropriated over a few different designs. I think maybe 5 or 6 that they actually could pull and name. What was interesting about that work was that they were able to, the company leader, Stephanie Housley, the CEO, she was able to pinpoint like the exact pictures or media that she took from, like took the design, put it on a pillow, something like that. What made that work interesting was that I thought about it, and this is me thinking about this in terms of how do you reconcile any of this stuff, right? Because sometimes it's just vague and it's like it looks native, and that's an education problem, not knowing that there's all these different tribes and that this beadwork can look this way or this, like regalia looks another way, all of that stuff. But with Stephanie, it was very definitive. And so what we did in her case is we researched the tribes that were affected by these different appropriations that her company had done. And we focused the philanthropy effort into those communities that she had taken those photos or those designs from. And from there, one of the things she said was one of her best sellers. And I was like, well, if you're gonna keep it, then you should keep donating a part of that profit continuously, right? And I mean, if you're gonna, you can't, I'm only advising. I wanna say that part, and it can be difficult sometimes, but at the end of the day, these companies make their own decisions. Anyway, I thought it was a pretty good meet in the middle because now Coral and Tusk sponsors a whole second Wyoming Arts Fellowship for Indigenous people because of that appropriation. So they have a continued relationship with the Wyoming Arts Council and fully support a second spot in a Native Art Fellowship for the whole state every single year. And that's how they've done some reparation and repair from their specific. And then, like I said, the other pieces that she had, she pulled them from her designs and made large donations to those communities that she had appropriated from. So it's always different, depending on how the company wants to take a stand. One thing I will say, if you want to, Jori is a great example and is very open and shares very well about how she felt about things. Stephanie Housley's blog that's on their website is incredible. Like, she inspired, it's not often that you see change in the social justice realm very quickly, or you get a lot of resistance and people don't understand it, and it is what it is. But one thing with Stephanie, she wrote this insanely great blog post about how she changed through the process, how she was just like, nope, I just want to put some money towards this and be done. Like, I was getting called out, and she's very blunt and honest about that, and that's how she started out. And by the end of it, she was like, how can I help more? How can I educate further? Like, this is, now I see, right? And so every time I do any talk, I always push people to read Stephanie's blog on her website. It is quite lovely, and it inspires me still that maybe some of this stuff that I'm doing is meaningful somewhere, some way, amongst the trolls that Jori and David still get. Yeah. So moving forward now, like, we'll talk about I'll let Jori take this part, because I'm like, I'm not trying to be that Avenger spoiler person that talks too much about what's upcoming. So Jori, go for it. Future moves.
You're so funny. So we have collaborated with a couple artists. We've done 3 launches with Adrienne. We've worked with an artist that Adrienne introduced us to, Lucy Shefke, on a few different launches of product that she's done. She's a wonderful graphic designer, artist, but she, is also an activist, and she also does really meaningful work for the nonprofit where she works. So we've done that. We have another artist who we're going to launch new products with next year as well. We do not have a quota that we're trying to fill of how many artists or how many collaborations that we launch with each year. What we're trying to do is build relationships and do things that are meaningful and do things that are in the right way. Sometimes, things go slower than we want. But what is the worst thing that we could do? Work with an artist who ends up feeling uncomfortable, or that they didn't want to work with us. Oh, okay. That's not really the way that we're going to show up better in the world regarding our cultural appropriation. So it's extremely important to us that the artists we work with feel great about it. And I'm not talking about being pushed. That's healthy. Like that, Adrienne, you can even talk about that, but I'm not an artist, but we've had so many conversations, like being pushed as an artist in a healthy way is a totally different thing than working with a company who's culturally appropriated and not enjoying that experience. So that is very critical. So that's, we have a very big launch happening in February. And basically I'll sort of say, we do have products in our line that are appropriated. We are, over time, figuring out what to do about those. Some of them are being redesigned by a native artist authentically. Some of them will ultimately drop from the line. What has been really nice, honestly, is all of our advisors, no one has said, okay, well, within the next 6 to 12 months, all that stuff has to be gone. Everyone is very understanding that we're trying to do this in a long-term way and also run a business where we can survive. And so doing something so drastic would, frankly, put us out of business. And so we're also doing this in the long run. We are not a sports team who's changing the name of our mascot and selling a ton of new jerseys and patting ourselves on the back and moving on. This is forever. So we appreciate that we are able to do that. That category of product is, to be totally frank with you, also decreasing. So it's not like this is, 90% of our revenue that is doing that. It's not that drastic at all, but it takes time to do it in a responsible way, both with who we collaborate with and how we replace things and how we best move on from things. So that's a little bit about, I guess, both what we're looking at and what we see coming. Adrienne, anything you want to jump in on that with?
I'll just say, and speaking Sure. Back to the entrepreneurship arm of things. One cool thing that has happened that also we didn't expect for Lucy in specific is that other large companies are reaching out, wanting their own version of her designs, and so that's pretty amazing for me. And like was a main hope and goal for all of us in doing this is that it's not just a launch for, you know, on this specific shoe or whatever, what have you, that it takes that artist beyond this also and be able, you know, to forefront that art in different ways as well. So
I just want to add one more
Yep.
thing. Adrienne has been very encouraging of us to start building relationships in Minnesota. And I would actually say that most of the influence around the products that have appropriation it's actually more of like a Navajo design, which is very common in the fashion industry. But Adrienne very smartly has advised us to start building relationships here and then build on that, which is something you felt really strongly about. And so I just want to like point that out too, because I mean, we would have had no idea to do that.
yes, and I think, well, I'll explain my thought on that too. Really came from, well, the fact that this is a Minnesota company, that it does have the word. We didn't touch on that, but moccasin is an Ojibwe word. Well, whatever. What did we call that? What's the term?
Oh, you like anglicized.
Anglicized term of an Ojibwe word. I love that. Yeah, so moccasin obviously is moccasins in the language. So I was like, well, you know, like you're a Minnesota company, we should start small. And also for me, when I started thinking about like, how is this reconciliation and moving forward and repair, I think it would have been really easy for them. And I purposely wanted to make it difficult. No, I didn't. But like, it would have been really easy for them to like grab somebody that was already popular in the native world, right? And been like, yep, we're gonna do this. And that would have made it easy, right? But for me, the real repair came from like, let's lift folks up that don't have that already, right? And focus on this area and the areas that, you know, are maybe haven't, you know, like we go back to that economic impact, who's been economically impacted on 169, how many years ago? However many years ago, yes. You know, so that's rebuilding, that's reconciliation, that's how those relationships move forward, right? And again, I always just want to say before we do take questions that I'm so, like this work to me has just become so, it's really big, but then when I think about it, it's very small. And at its best, what Minnetonka is in the phase of in that reconciliation process now is trusted behavior, right? Like, so once you acknowledge, you apologize, and the only way that you can rebuild trust in communities is through trustworthy behavior. And that's where we are with this process now, and as Jori has stated, will forever be, right? Because it's a consistent and constant process that they want to continue as it should. So yeah, I think that's a good point to end on. And either one of us fully open for questions, even ones that we can Google. Yeah.
Hi, Adrienne. So you have made a number of jingle dresses for my granddaughter, Sherer.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I also have another granddaughter who's younger who painted the Wobegon ox in downtown Brainerd, Ayana. She's at the Purpose Art Institute right now. But my question centers around, you know, art that you would look at that you would say, oh, that's native. But like for Ayana, she's a Red Lake enrollee, but a lot of her art is just art. I mean, so how would that be usable maybe, or how could she be in contact to be lifted up in that art, which people might look at and not even realize it would be like sort of native?
Yeah, nope, that's a big conversation that happens, I think, in museums, and I think just across the board, right? Like, just because you're not painting a painted horse or something, or an Anishinaabe floral, doesn't mean that your art is any less respected. And I think that that's a concept that the art world is going to just have to like reckon with and figure it out. And to say, you know, it's like the difference of saying like, you know, you walk into a museum and there's American art and, you know, these different, like Indigenous art is American art. There's no split between that. So I don't know an answer of like, we just keep pushing those Indigenous artists into those spaces, and to say like, just because I'm Indigenous, like, yes, this is still Indigenous art, even if I paint a lollipop, right? Like it is. And that's equity, right? That's what that looks like. So yeah, I agree. And it's a real thing that's happening. And like I said, all of this stuff kind of is very new and people are still trying to understand those types of questions. Yeah. We lost Jori.
What's your opinion about lacrosse as a sport? I just wanted to know, because
Lacrosse as a sport?
yeah,
You know, I think that it's grown to be, I mean, I think that more could be maybe out there on the history of the game, but I think it's great. And I think that that's a really good example of kind of what she was just talking about, where something that is shareable and is out there, you know, can grow and be respected in a way, you know. And I think a lot of this, like, it takes education, right? Like, if we don't understand these concepts and these wrongs and what all of these different things, like, we're not gonna, you know, be able to move out there. But I think the fact that lacrosse is like a hugely growing sport is awesome. You know, it's creator's game. So, and if you didn't know that, you can Google that too. or there's somebody sitting behind you that knows a lot about it.
This is more
Hi.
just a personal, weird, selfish question. Do you know anybody that makes traditional lacrosse sticks?
Yes, there is quite a few folks. I follow two folks that I know for sure on Instagram. One is, gosh, we have to remember they're like not theirs, they're at Tom Howes and Max Kelsey are two that I know I see constantly on my Instagram.
I'm trying to get a few, and every time that like I go to order one, either I can't or they're not available for 3 or 4 days.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
You're back.
I'm back.
Okay, that's good. I got this. You had me earlier. I got you.
Sorry about that.
I guess I don't know that like too many people. If you are asking like a specific Indigenous artist, I would say that time frame sounds about right for me, because you're getting something handmade, you know. And again, you might not like the price either, but I think those two, I've definitely seen them do sets. So those are two people you could reach out to, and I'm sure there's more that I don't follow but are out there, you know. But those two names, Tom Howes and Max Kelsey, I know for sure they make them. All right, let's throw Jori a question. No, I'm just kidding. No, happy to answer any questions. Anyone else? There's never a dumb question or comment. Let me just say that much, because I'd rather answer it and then have you wonder.
Big Witch, Adrienne, for being here.
Oh,
So
yeah.
So part of your giving back and telling this story and making it alive and local too has been some of the profits, I understand, from the particular shoe that you designed is going back into the local economy and Indian education. Is that correct? And can you talk
Oh,
about
yes,
that?
very important. And that's, Jori and I forgot to bring that point up. So there is a philanthropic side to the things that we do, aside from Jori and her family making donations on a yearly basis. Each of the artists that have done a collection or will be doing a collection have an option of a percentage of profit to go to an organization of their choice. My specific choice for the Baypatia shoes that I just had launched in September. Was it? Summer,
Yeah.
July, okay. Went to Onamia Public Schools Indian Education Program. So if we're looking at, like I said, again, a lot of this is very big, but then it can always bring it back very small. So I chose to do that, as that's an organization that I've personally worked with. One of my really good friends, Chris Naquinabe, works there and has worked over the last 10 years or more to change the culture of the school, and I mean that word in the context of the way that the U.S. looks at it, of understanding and to teach more, because that school is, I think, last I knew, it hovers around 51%, where the Native population is more than the actual non-Native population. But there's never been Ojibwe taught. There's never been Native history, all these different things. So, you know, you look at this, there's reconciliation on that level, where now that organization is gonna get some funds to help, you know, build this education and build these kinds of, you know, like harmonious future roads better. In the back.
We're also excited
Oh, go ahead.
because Chris brought a class of hers to our company, and we had an amazing day together where we talked about a lot of the stuff and answered questions and engaged with them. So it was really personal too, which was amazing.
Absolutely. Yep.
Hi. Is this working?
Yep, I can hear you.
All right. Hi. I was just having a question, since I personally, I was going to say, like, all the stuff you're doing is absolutely great so far, and I was wondering though, lately, like, are you doing education about the products you're selling? Because I guess there's still, I mean, I can't really speak since, you know, I'm not Native myself. I just want to ask, do you think there's possibly still an issue where people are buying products and divorcing them from their original context? And yeah.
Do you want to go first?
That's a great question. Yeah,
Yes.
we do a lot of storytelling when we launch any product with a Native artist. So our whole marketing team, who Adrienne and other artists we work with have gotten to know super well, we do a whole question and answer so we can make sure we're talking about their inspiration, their background, all of that in the way they want to talk about it. Again, what could be worse than launching a product with a Native artist and then us just kind of like going rogue and saying whatever we think about it? No, they should. Part of shining the light is letting them use their own words. So that has become kind of a robust process. And one thing that I'm going to let Adrienne talk to in a second is about how these products get named, because that's really specific too. But before you get into that, Adrienne, I do just want to say, yeah, at a certain level, I'm sure there are people out there who are buying products that have no idea because they didn't read about it, or they just saw it and they liked the look of it and they clicked buy, you know, or they saw something in a store. Some of Lucy's beautiful beaded design mocks have just been in stores. Maybe they don't see the sign that's up and they just buy it. And you know, that's not the worst thing either. They liked it. It stood on its own. It wasn't just for the story, and somebody is now supporting, whether they know it or not, an artist. So that's part of, I guess, the reality of consumer culture. So that's how it answers the brand. And Adrienne, you can talk about the names and whatever else that you wanna.
Yeah, so that was also a really big piece of it too, and I think why even the apology and like the storytelling piece is so we push it so far ahead, in hopes that people will choose it because this company has been doing better, right? I mean, maybe like Jori said, that wasn't their thought, but that was my thought, you know, and like why I would want to work with this company over others who maybe were just like, yeah, let's just throw money at it and like move on, you know. To me, it is really.
I thought we can't control everything.
Yeah, and again, I like I said earlier, I do not read underneath the labels because it's like somebody can see something and be like, oh, they apologize, okay, like, and then that's it, like, and then we've had it where people get red hot about, well, what about this? How come? Oh, now they can just work with an artist and it's all good. Well, like if you read further, there's been this whole journey and this really thoughtful process that is doing the best, and that's something that I think I come up with too. And to talk to your point, it's like allyship has to happen. And as much as we want like Indigenous business to thrive on their own, and we want that, like I want to see that too. I'm excited about it when I see that. There also is room, if we're talking about equity in a business economy, for artists to do collaborations with big business. That should be normalized. And this work is helping that along. you know, in a really great way. It's like setting a huge example. Instead of just having this Navajo looking design, we're telling you about it and educating you about that specific tribe and that person and why that art's special to them. So that's why I think what you're saying, it is important, the story is important, and it should be out there and above all the other things, to try to avoid what you're saying, that it's just something somebody clicks. So, anyone else?
Can I ask a question? After the audience.
I think that's it. I don't see anyone else. Go for it.
I'm not Native. Can I wear a Native designed accessory or shoes or anything?
You always ask that, and that's such a good question. I feel like her and I are like, we're stooges right now. But it's a good question. So I just actually did a voiceover on a video talking deeper about cultural appropriation and the deeper understandings of it, aside from just this is what Google says. What the best advice is that if you are getting to know the Native artist that you're buying from, we as Native artists are pretty well aware of what should and shouldn't be out there for folks to buy and to purchase. So it kind of takes, like what Jori said in the very beginning of this presentation, it takes a little bit of work to make sure that you, are really buying from someone who is Native American, and you can look, where did they learn that craft? Did my grandma teach me? What are all these things, right? Or are you buying from somebody who's making something that looks Native or is Native inspired, right? There's those lines that are crossed right there. And most artists, if they're legit, will know what you should and shouldn't buy. Like I get this question all the time because I make jingle dresses. Like, can I wear a jingle dress? And my answer is like, nope. Like that is for us, and if you stay for the 12 o'clock thing, we'll tell you about that too. But for us, it's like a cultural item, and I fail often in English to find the words to like equate this to of like, it's something ceremonious and cultural that is Anishinaabe specific. I've had someone be like, well, can I just buy it from you and I'm gonna like wear it in my house only, and I would never go to a powwow, but I just wanna wear it just in like, and I'm like, nah, I'm not making that for you. But like, so it's like weird questions, and maybe it's not weird questions, but just, I think that, again, I always bring this back to like, it has to be an education around that, and for understanding of like, to talk about it at noon, like what the jingle dress means to Anishinaabe people, where it's not just something you can just go put on and dance around your house in, right? Like it's meaningful to us in a sense that, it's just, again, I don't know a way to put that forth in the English language, that's something on that high of a thing, where it's like, I think we're so used to it in American culture to just put on a kimono if you want to and not think about what that looks or feels like for other folks, and not take into context that culture or where that came from or that understanding or anything, that I think that it just goes into, But anyways, back to my whole point. Most Native artists will know the things you should and should not be able to purchase from them. Okay, well, that question put 3 more questions up in the audience.
I do want to be respectful of folks' time, so we can continue with the questions. If there are any students who do need to leave and need to do so, please feel free to do so when you need. Who did I have for questions?
So, what are your thoughts on, like, if it wasn't made for you? So, my step-parent, who I grew up my whole life with, he's Native, and his parents are Native. They grew up in Alaska, and they have handed down stuff to me to wear as a child. I have lots of jewelry, gifts, Native-made art that wasn't intended for me, but it's mine now. Though I am not Native by blood, but I grew up around everything. No, I wouldn't wear it to a powwow, but I've been to powwows. what is your thoughts on that?
So jewelry and that type of thing is pretty commonly given as gifts from, folks who are native to maybe folks who aren't. So that's not even shocking to me at all. I think that's pretty, and then familial things like that, wearing that type of thing. I think where it gets dicey is fans, eagle feathers, regalia, ceremony clothing.
So it would be ceremonial clothing, pendants, all sorts of stuff.
Medallions, things like that, I don't think are as ceremonial. It depends. That's again where I think doing that research from tribe to tribe of what types of things they hold, right? And what kind of items you're holding, right? And to really understand it. So I think the more you know and can find out about it for that specific tribe, the better.
I was once given the advice of one of the biggest points of pain in the Indigenous community and in the Native American community specifically is invisibility. And not all what you've done so much work on, Adrienne, around education. And I was given the advice once of, and I'm not talking about regalia or spiritual items or anything that you're mentioning. I'm talking about jewelry, shoes, if you will, that kind of thing. Which was, yeah, wear it and then tell anybody who's looking at it or asking about it who made it. Tell the story, shine the light, give the voice. That's part of it. And you were making the point earlier, but you have to know what you're saying. It'd be great if you also knew the tribe of the artist or if you knew a little bit about it, but it's combating that invisibility and giving voice to that is kind of a nice way of showing up. That was just advice I was given once by another advisor. Okay, I have to hop off. I'm so sorry. Thank you all for having me via Zoom. I guess we're in a COVID world where that's okay, but I really appreciate it. Thanks, Adrienne.
Thanks, Jori.
We have a couple more questions back here.
Sure.
I think between the last question and the comment answered my question. I was at the Heard Museum in Arizona several years ago, and in the gift shop there was a Native woman, and the Heard Museum, as you probably know, is Native arts. And so I saw these wonderful earrings that looked like feathers. And so she started talking to me. She was an older woman, and she said, in the Native culture, as we start to go gray, we look at the feathers as wisdom. And I was going gray at that point, and I bought these earrings, and they're beautiful. And every time I wear them, I get comments, and then I tell the story of how I went to buy them and what they mean to me. So I'm assuming that's great.
Yeah, and see, that's what's gets interesting about this work in general is I'm an Anishinaabe and I can really truly only speak to that, right? That's why I said, if that's the story, those feathers for those earrings that you bought and you spoke to that specific artist from that tribe, you got the story and you can tell that, right? Same with your jewelry that was passed to you from your family, you can tell that story and say, yep, it has meaning. And it's more than just, I went to, Walmart and got these, Navajo looking designs and I don't know anything about it. It probably is just mass manufactured. And so, yeah, and a lot of that work is really meaningful and it's passed down through, years of mastery and work that has come down. And again, like Jori said, invisibility is a real thing that has occurred. So, anyone else?
Yes, just a comment first. As you've been talking, I remembered reading a book back in the 60s or 70s that dates me, after the Watts riots in Los Angeles, written by Leroy Jones, a book called essays called Home. And he talked about art as process, not artifact. And it kind of rang true for me listening to you that cultural appropriation is taking the artifact and putting it on the marketplace with total disregard for the process and the meaning.
And story and everything else.
That's part of the meaning, the story behind it. And so it's important that the stories get passed on.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, even just the idea of it, right? And it brings us all back, what you just said, to this journey of Minnetonka, right? Like, where was any story other than just rolling up and having something, like even the font that they used to have and an arrowhead, like it was implying it, but not telling anything else about it. That's why I've brought it up and said, like, yeah, you wanted that from us and it looked cool, but like, you know,
but you knew
don't
nothing
speak your
about
language, cut your hair, all those other things, right? Were happening and occurring at the same exact time frame. And I think when people try to depart the appropriation from like true life experience, like you can't, you know? It's like you can't tell someone what their lived experiences are because of it. And I don't even think we've begun to scratch the surface of what the impact has been, you know? Like we're trying to do better now, but like, you know, how have people felt over years about the mascots? I mean, there's so many things that are just now, you know, how did that make people feel? We've never even stopped to think about that. It's always just like, oh, well, it's their deal with it, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it's like a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step, and
Yep.
at least we're stepping. The other thing that I had never thought about until a couple days ago, and it kind of a little hard to wrap the brain around, but to meet somebody who is native by culture, who has not a drop of native blood, but totally grew up in the native culture. And it made me question about adopted kids, you know, from other countries, growing up in this culture, et cetera. I don't know if you have any comments on that. It's a new experience for me to try to even think about that.
Well, it's a big topic right now. I mean, it's, I guess, a fun name has been made out for it that's called pretendianism, where if people aren't born with indigenous blood and then, you know, maybe they somehow adopt this identity through their work or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, I think the line draws between like, you can be a major ally and work for folks, but if you are not of that, you know, that tribe or those people, like, I don't think that you should be standing up and speaking for them. Like, we can ally it hard. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. For me personally, I think it's strange, something I can't understand why someone would do it. Like, I get it, like, Native people are cool and the culture is cool, but I haven't met anybody like what she was saying about Gwen Stefani. I just feel Japanese. Like, that's why, you know, like.
All right, what if though it's a child, you know, an infant that is brought up totally in that culture?
You know, and that's.
They know no other culture.
Well, and this is a complex subject. I want to lay that out there to say.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so that's what and that's all construct too of colonization right there. There's like, if we can talk go into detail about blood quantum, right, and what that looks like, and why it is a touchy subject for Indigenous people, because we've had to prove ourselves through all these processes and has, you know, be like bloodlined like horses or, you know, dogs, and then here comes somebody who can just come put the hat on and the Minnetonka moccasins and be like, I know what that's like. No. So it's interesting. It gets dicey, right? It's like, you can grow up. I mean, I have friends that grew up with us, came to the res and rolled around, you know, hung out with us through and through. I mean, that's a common experience even at Onamia Public Schools. Are they Native though? They weren't born in Native. You can grow and learn and ally. I don't think you can ever, like, I'm never going to be like, use the Gwen Stefani reference again, Japanese. That's just not how I was born. It's not, I could be raised there too, but I would never say that I was, you know? I don't know. It's an interesting topic and it's really big right now and people have their own thoughts about it and traditional ways of adoption and all this other things like that play into it. But I think where like the itch point or where people get annoyed is it is talking about the fact that Indigenous people have had to prove themselves as Native through blood. So then when someone says this, that, or the other thing, like, it becomes itchy for identity, right? And that's way off topic, but that's just my hot take on it. And I think it's you know, that's all a part of reconciliation too, and is coming more into the light of. I just sent my friend an article about some Milwaukee professor that had changed her last name to an Ojibwe last name and had been doing all of this amazing work, was, you know, an ally to Native communities, but then was found out that she had no actual ancestry, you know? So it's like, we want the allyship and that's cool, but I don't know, like, when you go to a stage and you're taking these opportunities and these awards and all these different things like that, and you're standing in that and saying, like, I am, when that's already been such a struggle, that's where I think the line lies. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I think, like, just my own personal opinion, that's the part where people start getting, like, you know, like, accept, yes, all of that, but then, like, it's also another form of taking, which has happened a lot to Native folks. So I get it, all in all the context. I thought I saw a hand. We good? Thank you for that. I think that's important. That's a whole, oh, we got one more. No? We got, I'm like, that's a whole nother Cultural Thursday topic.
Folks, can we please give a round of applause for Adrienne? Thank you very much. If you have the availability, we encourage you to join us at noon, where we'll be presenting the Jingle Dress Dance. If you do not, thank you for being with us today. I encourage you again to check out International Education Week out in the lobby. There's some information about that. Also, down the hall in this lobby, you'll see the cross-curricular program for Silent Sky. That is the current Brainerd Community Theater production. It involves several different members of the CLC faculty and many students who have put together some work on it. So while you're here, I encourage you to take a look at that. If you haven't seen the show, there are 3 more performances tonight, Friday, and Saturday. Thank you again, and we hope to see you at noon.